Being a futuristic racing game is a poison chalice in some degrees, because between your Wipeouts, your F-Zeros, probably your Grips and your Redouts, you've kind of got the market covered at the top end of the tier. So Flashout 3, who is an IP that's been going for a little while and has just been recently rejuvenated, is aiming for that next tier down. A little bit budget, a little bit AA, single A perhaps, but above that bare bones indie level that some of the kind of niche races go for. In that, it's trying to fill a void in the market, and it does so in some ways, it fails in others, and it has some interesting design choices that I think will be Marmite to everyone, and I'm going to get straight into those. Flashout 3 is all about bullet hell combat. Racing is going on in this game, but it's almost secondary, because after the first either 4 to 8 seconds in a race, you have 3 different weapons that are turned on and recharge quickly and constantly. And so it's less around racing and more around spamming your weapons, because the AI are spamming the weapons at you too, and seeing whether or not you can survive. And it feels almost luck of the draw sometimes as to whether you can escape at the end and break out and get 3. Now, you can do this sometimes by managing to kill off all of your enemies and then escaping and getting enough of a gap so that you're outside of every enemy's reach. And that's where the skill of driving comes in, because very similar to Wipeout and other futuristic racing games, you'll drive forward, but instead of having a brake that kind of works for you or a steering that works for you, it's air brakes. So you'll be using the bumper controls to kind of air brake to the left and to the right to make tight turns. This, combined with a plethora of speed boosts throughout every single level, means that driving, although secondary, you still need to be able to do it, but it only really becomes much of a consequence if you break free from the pack. And to break free from the pack, you have to spam your bullet hell weapons ad infinitum. And this is where my crux of Flashout 3 kind of hits a little bit of a, do I like it, do I not like it? Because the game is pure and utter chaos, but it doesn't feel like chaos that you're fully in control of, nor does it feel particularly fair, because if you get to the front of the queue and you aren't able to break away, then you just get absolutely smashed to bits and you end up at the back again. Once you end up at the back, you've almost got to try your cycle so that you can end up back at the front and steer in the right direction and just have enough percentage to get over the finish line to win. In a way, this game reminds me of the exact same problems that Onrush had, the Cody's game that was all about racing but had no racing involved in it whatsoever, because it was more about the vehicular combat that was taking place. This is a much more clunkier and less cohesive version of Onrush in some ways, because you've got eliminations, you've got races, you've got destruction events of how many other people can you eliminate and blow up, but very little of it is actually around doing a pure racing lap. There are some of those in speed laps where you get 3 laps and it's all like a time trial, but those pop up as one of like 25% of the content, and so you're kind of like, I've got to get used to the bullet hell nature of this game. I can see this turning off an awful lot of people, and to be fair, I started to get very frustrated on it, particularly as you go up the 3 classes of speed. At the beginning of the game, it feels a little bit more palatable because the speed of the game is slower. But when you're then having to deal with the fact that you're air braking and trying to shoot everywhere, yet the enemies seem to always be able to hit you, but your weapons aren't always necessarily connecting with everything around you because you're air braking and flying around, it just gets a little bit too chaotic for its own good. And whilst all of the effects are exploding on the screen and the game runs smoothly, and there are moments in this game where I think, do you know what, for a budget team, this game is visually and frame rate-ally, if that's such an ally thing that you can do, it's kicking ass. And actually, like from a technical perspective, it's kicking on all cylinders and it works really well. But it's that whole, I come to a racing game for my racing, not for the bullet hell back and forth nature of it. And that's where Onrush failed, and that's where I think Flashout 3 fails too. And it's not a sales pitch, and it's not, oh, you don't get it, you don't get it. It's about the balance between at what point in a, say if you take this into like a kart racing setup, how much do you want the influence of all of those spamming of attacks to mean that you can't progress forward very much? And some kart racers do that and they don't become an enjoyable experience. Flashout 3 does that, but it just does it in a Wipeout setting, so it's a bit of a shame. Outside of that, there is 2-player split screen. You can have it vertical or horizontally, which I quite like, and again, that runs nice and smoothly. You do unlock more and more weapons to choose as you go through the game, and what I really like about the strategic choices of this is that different ships have different stats for speed, handling, durability, but also energy. And the way how you pick up your 3 different weapons is that they're all given an energy number. And so you can have more powerful weapons, but because these stats of the ships are kind of taken into account in an overarching scale, having the best weapons then means that your ship will then handle more clunkily, or be slower in straight line, or be less durable. And so there is like a yin to the yang. But I did generally find that so long as you've got a vaguely fast enough in a straight line ship and you've got chunky weapons, that's kind of the best way of going about it. It doesn't matter if you're exploding everywhere or if you can't steer, because it's all about that bullet hell. But at least there's some strategy there in the way how you set up how your ship works and all of the different weapons that you get. Throughout the game, you're constantly earning points. Those points unlock, as I say, the ships, the weapons, but also additional tracks that you can then use into the single race mode, because otherwise you'll just be playing through campaign over and over again. There's some awkward messaging around some of that. So if you come 3rd or 2nd in a cup, it still tells you that you won the cup, because you've won the conditions to unlock the next one, but you haven't technically won the cup. So there's just a few little quirks and weirdnesses going on there. But yeah, this is an odd one. I don't think that this game has quite scratched the itch for me. I feel like the bullet hell elements of the weapons have overpowered the actual racing part of this game. And so when you've got all of these other things, particularly with Redout 2 recently out and things like that, I think this game will struggle to get an audience and really garner much attention outside of a niche community. That being said, it does have a 90% positive Steam review rating, but you can see the yin and yang there in the reviews of people going, yeah, this feels like quite fast and competent and it's bullet hell, yay. And then everyone in the negatives going, you can't go more than like 10 seconds without exploding everywhere. What a frustrating pain in the arse. And I have to say, I probably fall into that latter category. Written review will be over on higherplanegames.com. Any comments or questions, leave them down below. I love that these types of games are still being made on a smaller budget with a smaller team. I think what was needed from this, apart from the balancing, is also just a little bit of personality in general to make it stand out from the crowd, so that it feels less like a Wipeout clone and more of Flashout as its own individual entity and IP too. That would be my only other advice. Take care, happy gaming! Higher Plane Games is part of the Higher Plane Network, a completely independent media outlet supported by people like you. The goal is to create the best possible content that cultivates a richer indie scene for games as well as music and entertainment. To find out more and to get involved, visit patreon.com/higherplane network. Your support makes all the difference, and in return you'll gain access to bonus content and downloads. Thank you for watching.